I want to begin with a little bit of a story because I am the son of the greatest generation. My own father served in World War II. He was D+2 and on the front lines of the Battle of the Bulge. And we just recently did some incredible research about what he was doing, what it was like during the 4+ years that he was in the war. My parents have both passed away, had many kids. I'm one of 16 children. So it was a great homecoming when he came back from the war. But as my dad always said, he was either a damn good Catholic or a passionate Protestant. So there you go. But I mentioned all of that because we came across all of the letters. Remember when people wrote letters? All of the letters that my dad had written to my mom. And as a family, we're talking and we thought, we got to turn this into a book. And so now we're in the early stages of doing just that. It's remarkable just to read what the experiences were like for him on the front lines. And I'm actually a Blue Star family member myself. I have 2 daughters, both Navy pilots. Thank you. I just talked to my daughter, Mary Catherine. She is class of 2017 from the Naval Academy, stationed on the USS Abraham Lincoln, just finished a deployment. She is in Lemoore, California. Her husband was Naval Intelligence in Japan, just finished 3 years and is back now in Central California. And my younger daughter, Kristen, is Penn State. We are Penn State, ROTC program. They should have won this year. Oh my gosh, next year. But anyhow, she was so excited because she just finished her sims and now is flying. This is her 4th day today of flying, and she is beyond thrilled. She'll be getting her wings in July, and she expects to be stationed in Norfolk. So really appreciate all of that. And her boyfriend is a true Top Gun, the real Tom Cruise, because he just finished Top Gun school. So I appreciate all that you're doing here. A little bit about Blue Star Families and the incredible work that they're doing here, because as a journalist, it's all about data, it's all about facts, it's all about science. And that science and that data really drives the research. I want to point out that when it came to the NDAA, it was the work of Blue Star Families that really provided such critical information to the Defense Department, to lawmakers here on Capitol Hill. And so it's not just events like this, it's driving people, and to the work that you're doing here is just incredible. So let me talk about what to expect tonight. In just a moment, I'm going to introduce somebody who you all know, Kathy. You're going to hear from military families, senior military leaders, and really talk about how to put this into practice. And then we'll talk to civilian and community partners about how it's all kind of coming together. So again, sit back, relax, enjoy the evening, and it's my great pleasure to introduce somebody who I met last year in Georgetown, the co-founder, the CEO, a force of nature, Kathy Roth-Duquet, who's going to be here to lead the first conversation and program. So Kathy, I will turn to you. Thank you all again for being here.
Thank you. Huh? Yep. Can you hear me? Okay, super. Thank you so much, Steve Scully. It means so much to us to have you with us. And what a fantastic story. And one thing I want to say is one of the great joys of my job is that I go out around the country and I talk about Blue Star Families and what we do. And people say, Blue Star Families, what is that? And I say, we support military families. And then people tell me their stories. They tell me their stories of their father or their grandfather or their uncle. And they tell it to me with this look of kind of wonder and pleasure on their face. Because in telling this story, it connects them to something that they really care about, that they don't always have access to. And they feel that I'm going to care and understand because of the work that I do. And I do. It's such a pleasure to hear these stories. And to me, and that you brought that up for me, because to me, that's part of the solution. Sometimes those of us who serve and our families in the work that we're doing and the challenges that there are, we think we're in it by ourselves. But there's so much more out there for us than we're aware of. We at Blue Star Families, we think it's our job to make it easier for the military families to feel that and make it easier for the civilians' families to show it. So the work that we do, the survey work that we do, is really to be more credible, right? To not only do what we think, but to do what the people tell us. We've been doing it, this is our 16th year. since 2009, since before we had any money, before we had any staff, before we had our 501c3 designation, we did our first survey because we wanted to tell this story and we needed to do it with data. So here we are, 16 years later. The world looks very different because we're not in the middle of the war, but we do have a few things that this survey points to that I think can help us all get ready. First off, I want to thank Congresswoman Chrissy Houlihan for getting this room for us. She was a member of the Quality of Life panel that supported us so much. I want to thank our fantastic funders. Without them, we wouldn't be here. USAA Foundation, I saw you earlier. Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, Macy's, AARP, and BAE Systems. We have fantastically distinguished guests here tonight, and we're so honored by having you with us. We are expecting 3 of our congressional partners, Representative Don Davis, Representative Jimmy Panetta, and Representative Sheila Clarfeus McCormick. So we're excited to have their support and their staff with us here. And of course, Tony Woods, Secretary, there you are, of Maryland's Maryland Governor Wes Moore's Department of Veteran and Military Families, one of the first states to take that designation. Also the co-chair of the recently announced National Governors Association Blue Star Families Initiative to work on how states can better support military families. Thank you for being with us, Tony. Fantastic military leaders. General Michael Gutlein and his wife, Rachel, thank you for being with us. Senior Enlisted Advisor to the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Troy Black and his wife, Stacy. Master Chief Heath Jones, Chief Petty Officer of the Coast Guard, and Carol. Over there you go, thank you. Chief Master Sergeant of the Space Force, John Bentavegna, and Kathy, there you are, thank you so much. And some fantastic senior spouses, Mrs. Jennifer Saltzman, of the spouse of the Senior Enlisted Advisor for the Space Operations, and Mrs. Evelyn Honia of the Navy Senior Enlisted Advisor. Thank you so much for being with us. So, 4 key takeaways that you're going to hear much more about, but I want to say them over and over again so you remember them. Number 1 thing, our military families see conflict coming. More than 4 out of 5 say in the next 3 to 5 years, conflict is coming. I think that's an important call to action for our communities to understand that much will be needed of them should that occur, and they are perhaps not ready. So we have to use this as a call to action to help get them ready. Number 2, we've uncovered some real strength in women in uniform. That's a good news story that we are seeing compared to previous years and even compared to male counterparts. Pride that women in service are feeling in their service, intention to stay, and interest in recommending service to others. Let's see what we can learn from this and where we can go. The challenges of military life remain in our survey, which was taken last year, the housing insecurity, the challenges with food, the spouse employment, childcare, all these things are all wrapped up with each other. They're all part of the same picture. We use that data to work on the NDAA provisions, which were historic, almost $2 billion. It will take some time to see their effects, but what we see from this is that certainly the reason it was there persists. And then we see a gap, which we think is quite useful. Military families continue to not think the larger society really cares or understands. It's improved from the beginning. When we did this 16 years ago, only 6% thought the larger society understood or cared. And now we're, up into, we tripled, quadrupled, quintupled that, which is good, but it's still a vast minority. But when we survey Americans, which we did for the first time, 90% say they do. Now, they do admit that they're not doing very much about it, but we think they're not doing much because they just don't know what to do. Again, we feel that's our job, to make it easier for them to find a path in and to find a path in that we, the families ourselves, think would be useful to us. So just a few highlights. With that, I am really excited to turn it over to my partner, Barb Carson from IVMF, who has been our trusted companions in this survey for so many years. Barb?
I'm Barb Carson, and the Managing Director for Programs and Services at the Daniello Institute for Veterans and Military Families at Syracuse University. We're the first national institute in higher education singularly focused on veterans and their families and positioning them to thrive in their post-service lives. We do this by designing and delivering leading national training programs in career preparation, small business ownership as well, and connecting veterans and their families with the services that they need in their communities. We work alongside those communities and with Blue Star Families as a partner in not just this survey, but in many things that we do to navigate those services. And we conduct, this is what we're most known for perhaps, actionable research, policy analysis, and program evaluation. Since 2014, as Kathy has said, it's been a long time. We have had the privilege to join the Blue Star Families in working on the Blue Star Families annual Military Family Lifestyle Survey. There will be an acronym right later that I don't want to mess up. This partnership is really important to us because it's a chance to collaborate in data collection and research, as this survey covers the continuum of military service, active duty, all the way through transition and into veteran life, and is comprehensive in the topics that include financial concerns for military families, childcare, military spouse employment, community resources, mental health and suicide prevention for service members, and a lot more. In these last 10 plus years, we at the IVMF have been honored, truly, and grateful to have the opportunity to utilize this survey as a means to learn more about the processes, needs, challenges of transition. And this year, we layer on additional insights into military to civilian transition process and the implications of that experience on the family. Can't wait to hear from the next speaker on more about that. And I'll turn to that now. And we are honored, I'm honored to introduce Dr. Lindsay Knight. She is the Blue Star Family's Chief Impact Officer. She's going to give us an overview of the key findings of the survey. I hope that you will find them informative and helpful, so much so that it will inspire you to learn more about how you can help and support our military and veteran-connected communities. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Knight.
Our research every year is massive, so you will be seeing a highlight of our information today, but I want to encourage all of you to go ahead and read the 120-page white paper. No, it's great. But you will see on the back tables are actually key takeaway cards, so those of you who have particular issue areas or interests, please pick these up. Insights are on one side, recommendations are on the other side, and there's a QR code to the full findings of each of those back there, so please take advantage of them. And now I'm going to jump right in. So, how could we start off survey findings without actually talking about who we surveyed? As you heard earlier from both Barb and Kathy, the annual Military Family Lifestyle Survey has been around for a while. We can proudly say that as of this year, we have had over 107,000 participants in this research. So when we talk about change over time and we talk about really amplifying and representing the voice of military families, we mean it and we have the numbers to back it up. So just a basic demographic background about who the populations are that are providing us this info for this year. Quick framing, and Kathy noted this in her opening remarks. This is our national context, and it's also our global context. Americans and military families are in agreement that military families are integral for sustaining a peaceful and stable world. That's actually really good news. There's alignment there. There's commonality there. There's common ground recognized there. But in terms of a global context, the significant majority of our country's citizens and 83% of active duty military families think we are on the cusp of global conflict, and that is a call to action for us to do something, not only to prepare those families, but to close that perception and awareness gap between military families, the civilian communities they call home, and create a stronger nation domestically in the process. It's also, I would say, a call to action to really round up support for all of the sectors that these families intersect with. So that includes Congress, DoD, local communities, state governments, MSOs and VSOs. It is a network that makes this happen. And I'm also thrilled to say every single one of those sectors is represented in this room tonight. So thank you for coming out to listen here and participate and figure out what we can do next. Okay, here are some highlights. 9 out of 10 of our respondents express pride in their service. That's a fantastic statistic. And even better yet, 55% of them report that they intend to serve longer than they thought. That is a good news story for retention. And there are also some challenges. In 2021, 49% of the military spouses that we surveyed in our research said they were satisfied with the military family lifestyle, and that dropped in 2024 to 36%. So there are quality of life challenges that are happening at a pretty quick pace. The three main themes that I want everyone to take away from all of these findings and research are: one, that pride in service is high, but quality of life and broader recognition and perception issues in civilian communities are undermining the resilience of the all-volunteer force. Two, quality of life issues are a recruitment and retention challenge, and therefore also a national security issue. And three, there is a huge area of opportunity for bridging military and civilian divides so our families feel seen, supported, understood, and the military lifestyle is valued as a benefit by both the military communities and the civilian communities. So our first big finding here, 7 in 10 active duty family respondents say that military service has added value to their life. Again, great. And there is a slight incongruity here that only 32% of those would recommend military service to a young family member. So we need to close that gap. Similarly, and Kathy mentioned this number increasing from the past, but around only 19% of military families think that the civilian communities that they call home either realize they're there or understand what service means to their families outside of what an active duty service member is doing when they're deployed. That is a gap that can be closed. Our recommendations on both of these scores: one is to monitor the implementation of the quality of life panel recommendations to determine how they impact service members and their families over time. And then on the community and MSO and VSO side of things, community groups really need to take the lead on increasing military cultural competence within civilian communities and providing those connection and volunteer opportunities to really bridge those gaps. Spouse employment and childcare. Spouse employment remains our largest issue with our respondent base. There is just absolutely no way around that. But a new finding that we do have this year is that the proportion of military families who said that 2 incomes were vital to their well-being increased from 63% to 77%. The financial strains our families are facing and the requirement of dual income households for financial security are increasing. This isn't just a BAH issue. If a family needs 2 incomes to survive, you need an employed spouse. So our recommendations and a call to action on that is joining our 4+1 commitment. That really involves maintaining and expanding remote work possibilities and telework for military spouses in government and private sector that encourages flexibility in schedules and locations and allows the spouse, when they PCFs, to move with their job and not have to start over from scratch again or face underemployment as a possibility. The most recent NDAA, as we all know, had some great wins with BAH and income increases for military families, particularly at the junior and enlisted ranks, but housing costs are still a heavy and, as we can see, increasing burden. In 2024, 26% of active duty family respondents reported their monthly housing costs were covered by BAH. That dropped from 42% in 2020. Significant change. Coupled with that, we also discovered this year that 27% of families experienced pay errors within the last 12 months. So increasing housing costs plus pay errors equal financial instability for our families, and for our enlisted and junior families in particular. So our recommendations are not only to restore BAH payment to 100% of the calculated rate, but also the DoD should implement clear and streamlined processes for resolving pay and reimbursement issues, and revise BAH calculation to align more quickly with fluctuating housing and rental markets, and consider evaluating at shorter intervals. Healthcare access is both a retention win and a retention challenge. As you can see from the bottom here, 49% of our survey respondents actually reported that they stayed in longer than they originally planned to because of the healthcare benefits. Great. And unfortunately, another 10% also said that it was the primary driver of them to leave service. So this deserves a lot more in-depth analyses, but some of the biggest takeaways really have to do with wait lists, service and care providers, and ghost networks. That is explained in much further detail in our report, but our primary recommendations, and again, we're saying this recognizing the nationwide shortages of mental and behavioral health care providers more generally, but we need to make the processes for mental health and healthcare professionals being accepted into the TRICARE network more efficient and streamlined, and we need to stop capping the number of providers in areas due to long wait lists. As Kathy mentioned, this is one of the standout highlights of good news in our survey results this year. Really positive findings among female service members. So what we are doing with women is working. As you can see from the top, female service member respondents were significantly more likely to recommend service to young family members than their male counterparts. 79% of female service member respondents felt pride in their accomplishments. Again, that's 10% higher than active duty male service members, and 50% of them agreed that being part of the military community is an important part of their self-image, which is, again, much higher than it was for their male counterparts. This is a really good news story and also really actionable across every single service. So we want to encourage the DoD to ensure recruitment messaging and tactics remain or increase inclusivity of women, and also ensure that female service members have proper fitting uniforms and personal protective equipment so that they can do their jobs to their best degree. Quick caveat with our findings here. Many of you in the room are familiar with Blue Star Families and familiar with the work that we have been doing for the past few years around suicide prevention through the Staff Sergeant Suicide Prevention grants through the VA. That we have been running a campaign for the last 2 years to destigmatize access to mental health and discussions of suicide within our population. There is a very reasonable chance, because of that 2-year campaign, individuals who are comfortable talking about this are overrepresented in our survey. So the one thing I do want to point our attention to, though, apart from those caveats, is the part at the bottom of this slide. Service members who do experience a suicide within their unit command within the previous 12 months may be less likely to recommend service to their young family members to quite an extensive degree. On a 0 to 10 scale, it's 3.78 versus 5.13. So this is a gap, this is a solution we can start to close, and it needs to happen on both the DoD as well as the community engagement side. For DoD, we really encourage DoD to integrate all prevention efforts into one operational office instead of having them dispersed, and then develop and implement a centralized behavioral healthcare management program to monitor and provide support for high-risk individuals. On the community side, we know from our research, we know from RAND's research, we know from a number of different studies, active duty service members and their family members are not very likely to bring up issues around mental health and mental health care or suicidal ideation within their command or within DoD contexts, which means if that is seen as an impediment, we need to bolster support on the community side so the resources are there for people without fear of stigma and without fear of repercussions on their service member's career. So we want to expand resource access and referrals to community support organizations like TAPS, like the Bob Woodruff Foundation, Blue Star Families, got to give us a shout out. Our programs team does a wonderful job at this. And also organizations that are members of the Face the Fight Coalition. There are hundreds of MSO and VSO groups around the country standing up to provide this support, and they need our attention. Last finding for us, transition and post-service life. The biggest takeaway here, and we're going to get a little bit more into this on one of our panels later, is that word of mouth matters. We know social connections matter. We know community matters. What we didn't know prior to this year, though, was that for transition and post-service resources, word of mouth matters essentially as much as VA resources. That's kind of mind-blowing. So what can we do on that? One, early and continuous transition preparation. Start the programs earlier within the VA and within each of the branches to make sure that the message is heard loud and clear, repeatedly, and much farther in advance than they are currently. And then on the community side, really, really focus on those transition support networks that can connect folks to local area resources, that can connect folks to jobs, that can do resume revisions and mentoring and things like that. So dual-sided effort, but we think this is a really cool one to focus on. I believe that is it for our findings. But again, I encourage everyone, it's a really, really well done report. Thank you again to our partners at IVMF and all of our funders for supporting this work. It has huge impact in our members' lives and in the legislation that gets passed in this country. And on that score, I believe I'm introducing the next panel, yeah? Troy Black, First Sergeant Stacy Black, U.S. Marine Corps retired. Master Chief Petty Officer of the Coast Guard, Heath Jones, Mrs. Carol Jones, Ombudsman at Large for the U.S. Coast Guard, and Mrs. Evelyn Honey, Ombudsman at Large for the U.S. Navy. Thank you all.
Well, thank you all for agreeing to have a chat with us up here, because I think it's interesting for the folks who are here and for us to share how you all receive this information and what some of your thoughts are about how we can make this actionable and what some of the responses are. And I'd just like to open up by asking, is this helpful to you, Sergeant Major, in the work that you do to get this kind of information from groups like ours?
Test. Okay, good. I'm a machine gunner, so if it doesn't go bang, I have to test it twice. The quick answer is yes. Any data that we receive, whether it's how communities support the military, how our families are interacting with communities, if there's challenges with the military lifestyle, it helps all of us. I won't speak for the services. They testify on this as well as me in my previous job and now as a senior enlisted advisor to the chairman. But that allows us to bring real information to our congressional members. I'll say that in this building because that's where we're at. It also allows us to talk to our force and our personnel with real information, not like I heard from the person next door. It's real information that we can use to help substantiate where there's problems and work on them. And sometimes say, it's not really as bad as you think, which is also powerful with the data. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I'd like to shift over to Evelyn as an ombudsman. How do you see in the work that you've done with the Navy, how do you see some of this, some of the findings reflected?
Well, I think a lot of times we come back with what we're seeing out there and it sounds anecdotal. It's, oh, you're just seeing it here, you're just seeing it there. And then when we see these numbers, they correlate. And so that helps us move forward on a lot of the things that we're seeing out there, whether it's community involvement, connectedness, families coming together and knowing their units, and just to help with mental health when there's a tragedy and things like that. So it does help us a lot in that sense.
Yeah, wonderful.
Thank you.
Master Chief Heath Jones, the Coast Guard is often less connected to the community because you're the smallest force and don't always get all of the extensive support that military families get. We actually find that among Blue Star family chapters, Coast Guard participants are a little overrepresented because they don't have as many options for support. So we're proud of that. But when you think about the risk of the coming conflict and the challenges that Coast Guard families might face, what are some of your responses to that or your thoughts about that?
Thanks for the question. And I guess, and this is uncomfortable in front of you, but I might start with disagreeing with you slightly on the connected to the community. Okay. In many places, I think we are extremely connected to the community. It's not a comparison amongst, right. So we don't sit around and argue, no, we're more connected. No. But in most places where our Coast Guard units are, we don't have large garrison bases like some of our other branches do. So an anecdote that I will use is, the Navy had a strategic need, the Air Force had a strategic need to have jets in Minot, North Dakota. So they built a big base, they rolled in everything you need, and then they put people there and they serve there. We have to have a buoy tender in Keokuk, Iowa, when we send 12 people. to live in the community. So we do get extremely intertwined into the communities. And really, when it comes to the coming conflicts, each of our branches, I will proudly say, are the best in the world at what they do. The Coast Guard has a role in the coming conflicts, and our roles may be a little more centered on the homeland, maritime transportation system, things like that, the maritime borders and approaches. I do think our workforce fully and our families do fully understand our contribution to that coming conflict, just in a different way than our other branches will face.
Super. Stacy, as a retired or as a veteran yourself, any thoughts about the findings with having to do with women in uniform?
Hello. Hi there. Thank you. He's always rescuing me. No, I appreciate it. So I'm a retired Marine, served 21 years, and it's been wonderful to be able to see the changes that have been since I was a young Marine. And there was 6% of women in the Marine Corps at that time. The numbers obviously have gotten a lot more. I've seen a lot of changes since that time, and I think it's wonderful. There's so many more resources that are for women throughout all of the services that you kind of wish you had it back then. But I'm just really happy about it, traveling all over the world and getting to speak with not only the spouses and families, but also the service members. I do get to hear the positive, feedback from the women that serve on all the different aspects. And we've come a long way. Just one thing that I'm getting my words mixed up. Please step in. Wink, wink, nudge. No.
This is called a lifesaver.
Lifesaver.
For any of us that are in the sea services, Secretary Del Toro just left as our Secretary of the Navy, and one of the last things he did is name a new class, not one single vessel,
Yes.
a new class of ships, the light amphibious warship, the Megan McClung class,
Yes.
after Major Megan McClung, who, by the way, if you've ever come in the entrance back here, coming in the building from the circle, her name's on that wall. And so that's a testament to how far we've come in the U.S. military writ large. Now we appreciate women in uniform.
Thank you.
You're welcome, sweetheart.
We practiced that, yes.
It's a partnership, right?
Yes.
Carol, what are some of the things you're hearing as you're out speaking to young families?
So it's kind of funny because all of the things that y'all said are things that we hear on a daily basis. It's my greatest honor to be able to go and talk with our young family members and spouses. And I had an ombudsman coordinator that said, cash. This is what everybody wants, not everybody has. And it's the childcare, the access to healthcare, also mental health, schools, spousal employment, and housing. So cash, everybody wants it, not everybody has it. And I always tell people, I'm like, show me the money. Like, you say that our families matter, show me the money. And we're finally getting to the point where people are listening, and the bump in BAH, the bump in pay, the increase in our E4 and below, that was huge. And it's really showing our members that we really care, and that it's not just lip service. So it's kind of interesting to go through all of it and see those are the things that we hear on a daily basis.
That's super. Sergeant Major, when you think about the tasks in front of you and how the folks in this room, whether they're congressional, state government, MSO, VSO, what do you need to set yourself up for success with the task you have with the force?
That's a good question, and I'll give you an answer from a different question that was asked, and kind of the same thing. So I served as a sergeant major in the Marine Corps from 2019 until 2023, and the first time I went back to our current sergeant major of the Marine Corps' annual symposium with the senior enlisted, I got asked a question. Hey, what do you see as your biggest challenge right now as a senior enlisted advisor to the chairman? And I thought about it for a moment, and I had to think about what I've been talking about for the last 8 or 9 months in the seat. It's explaining to our force and to the greater public the difference between our version of conflict and combat and what war is. Is there any World War II veterans in the room? Is there anybody who's been in the military within the last 80 years? We've never been to war. No one with your hand up has been to war. Mr. Scully, you mentioned your father, right, was in Battle of the Bulge. We just celebrated the 80th anniversary last week, right? It's another word I would add out of that conversation that we need to be thinking about is preparedness. Imagine today it's 1939 and not 2025. What would the United States of America be doing in 1939 if it could foresee that there's going to be war or conflict? Let me not be a warmonger for a moment, and this is where the question's at, because I'm not. Anybody a historian, got a degree in history? Anybody a favor of history? Here's one thing that's inevitable. There will be war. So we probably should not talk in terms of like, it's next generation's problem. Our adversaries don't think that way. They're bringing that forward to us. So we talk a lot about readiness. I would add preparedness to that. And so the challenge in the seat that I'm sitting in now, and I think it's the same for all of us right now, officer or enlisted, is being able to, one, get our force to understand we will win, America, right? Number two, we need to convince our leaders to talk in terms that let our society know that there's a challenge. And the only thing that matters is that, which is on the wrong side of the room, by the way. There's a point which would have never happened in a different generation. So we have to focus on what the important things are. That's where I'm at, man. Thank you.
Evelyn?
Things are different, now than they were back for World War II, World War I. But I always tell people, the one thing that's never changed is what we ask of our service members, to be willing to give the ultimate sacrifice. And so although we all come from different generations and different times and we see things different, that is what we're asking. So we need people to understand that we need to be connected. We need to have the civilian population and our own population, because some of our own military population is detached. And that's not a good thing. We got to figure out a way to come together. And I was telling some people tonight that I was watching a video of the parents of the crew chief who passed away in the Black Hawk in the recent incident. And I would tell you, look it up on YouTube. I was listening to them speak, and I was ready to cry along with them, and they didn't. And I'm going to tell you what they said. They said that the reporter asked them, "Do you regret your son going into military?" And they said, "No." He had the world ahead of him in it. It's what he wanted to do. And as they spoke about how they had been treated since this happened and how they've been reached out to. And I'm getting chills, because that's the way it should be. And they felt that they said, the military family has been reaching out to us. And I was by myself going, yay! I'm like, that's what we want, And it just warmed my heart to see that they have every right to be devastated right now, and they did not come across that way. And it was a long interview, and they spoke about his service and what the service did for him and how it changed him and made him a better person and all these things. And I'm thinking, this is in the midst of a tragedy. But that's because everybody did their part. And someone in this room has a friend who worked in that unit, and they were telling me that unit has always been well connected, has always been very close. So how do we get our civilian partners, our military families to be close? Because when this happens, and it will happen, we're going to need each other. And that's why I thank you for what you guys do to bring the community together, and you're working with services that work with us to try to accomplish that. And that is something we really, really have to focus on.
Thank you so much. Any last statements yes, please.
So all of the services have been doing this big push for recruitment. And we've been having the conversations of what can we do to help people want to come into the military. And honestly, just tell the story. And that's the part that I really struggle with sometimes, because I hear, of course, people come to me with their problems, but I'm like, we have struggles, but that's not what our military is about. Our military is about the community and being together and the adventure, the things that we've gotten to do and see, and people that we've been able to meet. That's what it's all about. And we just need to make sure that that story is getting out and make sure that we hear the positives and not just the negatives.
And that's what I was going to say is how we talk about, we're seeing these things, the likelihood to recommend military service to. How we talk about military service matters. And I'm going to steal some of your material, SEAC, if you don't mind. I've heard you wax poetic on this. Look, are there hard times in military life? Absolutely. Find me a chosen profession in the world where there's not hard times in that chosen profession. We have a clear sense of purpose, a clear sense of mission in the United States military. Our families are amazing. As Carol said, opportunities are abound. This woman has allowed me to serve over 3 decades because she's treated everywhere we've gone like an adventure. And just the sense of freedom that had to keep me focused on the mission, to keep me ready and resilient to do the mission at hand. And to remind the citizens of America that there may have been a time, not in my lifetime, when enlisting in the military may have been your only choice you had in life. Donning the uniform of your nation is a damn honorable profession. And we need to talk about it like that. We need to talk about just the amazingness that comes with serving in the military. We'll sit, me and B9, Troy, we'll sit around and we'll argue over whose service is best. Just come join the military, please. Come join the military. You join the other branches. You'll come to the Coast Guard later. That's okay. But just come join the military. We will help you find the right services that suit your skills. And it is an honorable profession. So that's how we talk about it matters.
Stacy, last word.
To go off of that too, that's my biggest thing is, again, looking at the survey and seeing, that a lot of service members and families don't think that they're understood by civilians. And I think a way to do that is to make sure that there's positive stories that are out there. We don't need negativity all the time. There's stuff that goes wrong in every aspect of people's lives. But to, again, talk about the military as an honorable thing, as a great thing to keep us, safe, to protect us. And, that it's not just a last resort to join. I think that definitely would help because I know, again, many choices. And to walk around, to go around, to travel around, and to see the faces of the different service members, but also the families and even the children that we get to talk to, and just to see them light up. Exactly what you said. It's all about adventure. It's all about adventure. Guess where I lived, for 2 years? I was in Korea, and it's just like going, oh my gosh, I've never been to Korea, and it's like, wow, think about when you go somewhere and you talk to those kids or other people. Wow, that's the positive stuff. So if we could spend more time talking about the positive reasons why we are serving, and that it's not just for the service member in uniform, it's also for the family, it's for the community, then I think that we would get a better result as far as they know how I feel, they know what we're going through, and we appreciate it.
Thank you. Please join me in thanking our panel.
You've just heard from the military families, and you know that old adage, it takes a village. Well, first of all, to all of you who have served, how about a round of applause? Thank you. Thank you so much. And to your family members, your spouses, your children, because we know it is a sacrifice. Thrilled to welcome back Dr. Lindsay Knight. You heard her just a moment ago. Terrific job outlining all of this. And the panel will include some pretty incredible people. I'd like to welcome to the stage Secretary Tony Woods from the VA Department of the great state of Maryland. Wes Moore, we love the governor. Thank you so much. Jay Bryson from Wells Fargo. Dr. Jeanette Harvey from IVMF. Francisco Jameson from Child Care Aware. And Lauren Kimball from United Way from Omaha, Nebraska. So they will all lead the conversation with Doctor. Thank you so much for being with us. We'll be back in a moment.
Everyone is taking their seats. Also, just wanted to thank Representative Tim Kennedy for joining us. Just walked in the room. We are always happy to have more public officials and public servants join us, so the more the merrier. Hi, everyone. So there are a number of former, recovering, current academics on the panel, so I'm just going to caveat that with my question to you all. I would love to do a round robin. What was the most surprising finding? And you only get to pick one, but the most surprising finding from this year's annual Military Family Lifestyle Survey. Anyone want to go first? Yeah.
Women, and surprisingly in a good way. What a wonderful surprising result. I mean, my father served in the Army for 22 years. And that would not have been the result. So to see how far we've come, and I know I'm the childcare guy, but the result on women is so inspiring. And I hope that we can continue to build on that, Kathy and her team and your team to build on that.
That's great. Thanks. Next up.
I was going to say that the satisfaction score was really alarming for me and disappointing. I think this is why I was so appreciative of Blue Star Families Do Your Part campaign. To me, as a leader in a state, we realize we have a responsibility to help to improve the experience of our military families when they move into our states, right? And so for me, knowing that corporations can do their part or other government organizations can do their part, that to me really stood out, and it's a wake-up call, and we need to take it seriously.
Similarly, in that vein, I think the understanding of the community and the perception of understanding in the community is very important, and kind of a wake-up call to those of us that are in community programs to make sure that we're leaning in, and is really a call to action. Especially, we know that more than 50% of our active duty folks live in the communities that are around their installations. So I think that for me was a reinforcement of that call to action.
Jeanette?
Well, I think it's a little unfair for me to answer this question since as a collaborator, I had extensive preview of the findings, but I will say in the veteran finding, we did find that half of the people that look for information about transition, they found it from talking to peers and friends. And so I think that's, for me, very validating. All the time that I spend talking to my friends, I'm a military spouse myself, to find out about all the communities you're moving to, all the resource you need. And this is no different also for the veteran population. When you're leaving service, you can imagine the conversations that people are having, that people want to have, talking to their peers, their coworkers. One time we had a military move, and we had the like a QA person come from the move. He came out and he was a retired sergeant major, and he started giving my husband advice about some of the transition process and how to do that. And this was a random person that we met during the move, and he had some very sage advice about the process. So I think that was very surprising but also validating, and maybe we'll have an opportunity to visit what that means in terms of implications.
Jay, you want to round us out?
Yeah, so I think the thing that I'm going to use a different adjective. I'm not going to use surprise. I'm going to use stunning. The stunning statistic for me was the only 1/3 of military families would recommend military service. And that, we've seen that. It's gone down from 50% just a few years ago. And that just correlates with the work that we've done in terms of income of military families, how a gap has opened up there. And I think the call to action here is we in the civilian world, just, if a conflict is coming in the next 3 to 5 years, we in the civilian world need to do a lot more in terms of providing the resources the military families need for that.
That's great. Thanks. Next question, and for those of you who missed it on the slide, the folks on this panel represent state government, private industry, academia, military and veteran service organizations, and community level nonprofits. So it is quite the network of folks that we have on stage here. A question to you all, in terms of community level solutions, everyone here has eyes on very different sectors and very different programmatic solutions and partnerships. What are some of the most innovative or interesting pilots or ideas that you've seen that respond or answer sort of the community level call to action for some of the challenges that we just saw?
Go for it.
I'll say a couple things. So one, just always a thank you to Kathy. Anyone who will listen, I always tell folks that when Governor Moore called me and said that I could take this role and have the privilege of serving this role, I told my husband, and then I called Kathy. And this is actually serious. You were in the first 2 calls I made. And it's because I thought we had an opportunity, and the governor challenged me, how can we lean into the military family space, right? And so I think that that's where I knew we have an opportunity to do something innovative and different. We were proud just last year in July to become the first state level agency to be named the Department of Veterans and Military Families, and we confirmed that with the National Governors Association. Everyone else is just sort of veterans or Office of Veterans. It's usually focused on that. The second piece that we did as part of the Do Your Part campaign is we actually got Maryland state government to join the Military Spouse Employment Program, I believe it's MSEP. Partnership, excuse me. So now every Maryland state job is listed on the MSEP website, right? So a military spouse can find that. But we coupled that with a change in our policy that was free, which is difficult or very important in sort of tough fiscal times, where just like we give a veteran 10 points towards their competitive application for a role in Maryland state government, we now give that to military spouses. So they can find our jobs, which are telework friendly and portable, and you get 10 points towards your application because of your service as a military spouse to the country. So we thought those changes were really important. One other piece that folks don't often hear about, but those who are military spouses can often tell the story about being up for a job, really excited about it. The employer looks at their resume and says, you seem to move a lot. In Maryland, we've actually made that discrimination on the basis of military affiliation in employment and in housing is now illegal. Many folks don't realize that, but we wanted to make sure a spouse had some recourse to at least push back if they found that kind of situation come up. And so we declared 2024 the year for military families. We passed 24 bills related to that. And we think that many states, we hope they follow suit because we think they can have a big impact in that way.
Great, thank you. Jay?
So I'm going to leverage what Secretary Woods just said, and that is in terms of the private sector, and it gets back to the astronomical unemployment rate among military spouses, is in the private sector, we can do more in terms of remote work. And I applaud you for your work that you're doing there. But in the private sector as well, we know remote work works. And it's a way for us, and I challenge Blue Star families to reach out to private sector entities like Wells Fargo, et cetera, and saying there's a big pool of workers here that you guys can tap into, because as an economist, I know the labor market is really tight right now. We need people who can work, and they can do it remotely. It would kill 2 birds with 1 stone, or solve 2 problems together, and that would be helping to bring the unemployment rate down among military spouses, at the same time helping to relieve the strain on the labor market.
So something I think that is really striking to me is that, as someone in the military family, but also working in military family research space, is that transition is only a part of the continuum in military life. And so I think through our research, we found that people have varying needs when they're leaving the military. Some, they're empty nesters. Through our survey, we have a lot of qualitative responses that we love. There are folks who, are excited to start the RV life. What a dream, right? But there are others who still have young children, and they're concerned with the communities that they live in, and they want to find a good place to settle in. But how do we provide services to all these different folks who have different needs? And I think part of it is some of our solution is, asking our partners at DoD and the VA to help to scaffold our service members and their families throughout the process, no matter if they're leaving the military service in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, or even 25 or further. One day, this is a transition that will happen, and what an honor. But at the same time, we want them to be prepared, because research tells us again and again, if you're prepared, you have good outcomes. Your family will thrive. Your well-being will also be off the charts. And so, I think there is an opportunity for partnerships between academics, nonprofits, and the government to work together to help facilitate that process, because it's not just one person's responsibility. I think the theme I heard earlier tonight is about how do we help the American public to also be involved in this process, to support our military families so that when they are leaving active duty, leaving the reserves component, they're going into a full civilian life, that they can also be successful. And so I think a lot of the organizations here represented have the capacity to think about that and be a part of that conversation.
You couldn't have me here and not talk about childcare. So, childcare, as we all come to realize, is a mission readiness factor. It's a force multiplier. So it's an important factor for our national security. One of the things we've got to do is make that process as easy as possible. When I'm talking to families, it shouldn't be harder to get childcare on post or subsidized than it is to get your mortgage. So we're working daily with the department and with all of our partners to make that process easier, make it more streamlined, to educate our families as they're going through the process and make sure that they are supported. I also think it's important for us to recognize the nexus between childcare and that military spouse employment. So we're a proud partner of MSEP and also now the 4+1 commitment, because we recognize that childcare, how important that is. We are working behind the scenes with our childcare resource and referral agencies that are on the ground to expand on the providers that are available to the military childcare in your neighborhood and plus programs. And I think through those efforts, we're going to see childcare, hopefully on those surveys next year, Kathy, we're going to see those numbers go down in terms of needing that childcare and having it being available.
From a community kind of programming perspective, when I think of innovation and what we can do kind of collaboratively, I think about braiding systems and how, as a community organization, we can braid those systems of support and come alongside the resources that are across DoD and in the community, whether it's locally or nationally, to make sure that folks have the best fit resource that's going to meet their need, so they can thrive, whether they're in a community a short period of time or a long period of time. And so locally, what we've been able to do through our local United Way in Omaha and partner with Offutt Air Force Base is to bridge the community and base resources through a 211 helpline and embed a navigator within the military family readiness office at Offutt. So if a spouse or a family member, an active duty member comes into the base and has a need, certainly they can access those DoD resources that are available, but the best fit resource might be one that's in the community. And so having that clear, warm handoff and true integration of those resources make that access point even more convenient, because we know that convenience is critical to being able to folks to get what they need, and because the resources are out there, and I think it's just a matter of connecting those systems.
Great, thanks all. I believe we have 2 minutes left, so it's gonna be a short one. I promise. But my question to you all, if you had a magic wand and you could change one thing about the military family experience or civilian recognition of those communities, what would you change?
Spousal unemployment.
Noted.
Childcare.
Actually, I would pick like mental health resources have more during transition.
I would just say accessibility.
I think for us, we realize similar childcare is a part of it, but employment is our number one priority, because we realize so many other things are related to that. Food insecurity, housing insecurity, quality of life, satisfaction. They all, I think, stem from both members of a household having a good active employment.
Thank you all for participating and joining us, and for all of your work that you do at the community level.
First of all, thank you very much for being with us. If there are any members of Congress who are here that want to provide appropriations for the program, we'd like to welcome you to the microphone if you are here. Is there anyone? We'll take that as a yes. A real force of nature. Thank you all for being with us. Kathy will get the final word, as we appreciate your time here today and enjoy the drinks afterwards. But first, final words. Thank you.
So thank you so much all for being with us here today. Thank you for all of our panel speakers who were just fantastic. I think the takeaway is this. America has an extraordinary military. People do not have any problem with the mission. They don't have any problem with the danger. They don't have any problem with the training that requires a lot of time away from family. They don't have any problem moving from place to place over and over again if that's what it takes to do this mission. And they have faith in their leaders and in their path to being trained and equipped to fight and win the nation's wars and to complete the missions. We see this in our survey, but we see that the lifestyle challenges outside of what the military services can control, the things that happen because 70 to 85% of our folks live in communities and live in a country in which most Americans need 2 incomes and in order to make the ends meet, that challenge, which was not designed by anyone, but just evolved from the way our society evolved and the way our military evolved, that challenge is interfering with our force. Nobody wants that to be the case. It is the case, but it's our responsibility to design a better outcome. There's 2 things that I would highlight that the military can do to make a big difference. Friction, like these pay problems that 27% of people experience and then causes cascading problems. We see the people who've had those kinds of problems, they are more discouraged than those who don't. So if we can fix that kind of friction, that will make a big difference. When you move people with less than 2 months orders, those people have the worst outcomes. They have a harder time finding housing. They have housing insecurity. The spouses have a harder time finding job because it takes a while to do these things. Those people who have 6 months or more notice, PCS orders, so they can, no kidding, make commitments, they have very few problems. The year that we did that survey, half of our respondents had less than 2 months notice. That would cost zero money out of the federal government. Just figure out how to write those orders sooner, and your recruitment numbers will go up. Because the families already like their service, they just don't like these lifestyle challenges that cascade down, and they don't want their kids to experience it. But for everybody else, all these other challenges, we own, we the community, we the Americans who aren't in uniform. The ability to get childcare to people where they live and have spots available, accessible. The ability for employers, Wells Fargo, we'd love to get you signed up for 4+1 because that's our employer program that allows military spouses to get the style of work that allows them to be successful. The neighbors, to recognize the military families there, to be their emergency contact and to invite everyone along to the park or the playground so that you have those peer resources, which at the end everyone wants. You don't want a service or a resource when you have a problem. You want someone who cares about you to talk to you. So this is the call to action for all of us. There are strengths, there are challenges. The challenges have root causes and upstream solutions. Let's get together so when the tough time comes, we're ready. And when the good times are here, we're even stronger. Thank you so much for being with us. Thank you to Steve Scully for elevating the evening. It meant so much to have you with us. And thank you to our applied research team. Wave your hands. You guys did fantastic work.